Beginning current Daf Mesechta Megillah Daf Lamed, we begin on the bottom of Chavtes Amud Beis, the second line up in the bottom of the Yomim, where the Gemara continues a related discussion, which will relate back to the previous Gemara we spoke about, the Parsha of Shkolim. The Machlik is exactly what it is. Is it Parsha Kisisa when it talks about the Shkolim, or is it that of actually in Parsha Pinchas when it talks about the carbon tumid, because that's what the Shkolim were used for. And then we had a discussion regarding if that's the Parsha before or the Parsha after. When you laid it in the Torah, what do you do then? Our Gemara continues in the related vein. It just goes by because that's called Tanitam Dafachaim. Krishna was doing this for today's Daf. Some of these we're discussing today's Daf are Dal Parashas, the order of the 4 Parashas that I read during Chodesh Adar, Makdim and Ma'achrid. The Gemara discusses regarding the Dal Parashas when they fall on different days of the week, such as Shabbos or Friday, or when Purim falls on one of those days, whether we push up the reading of the Dal Parashas or we postpone it. That's a machlekes. Let's say the parashas for Chayzer, whether we read the Dal Parashas instead of the usual Torah reading of that Parsha Shavuot in the month of Adar, we only change the Mafter and the Haftarah, but the Kriyas Torah stays the same. And L'chol Mafsikin is the halacha that we interrupt the usual Torah reading for all these special occasions. So we begin the current Daf Chav Tes Mebeis, second line up and bottom of the Yamin. Says the Gemara Itmar, we learn Chal Liyos, if the Parsha Shkolim falls out to be Biva'at Tetzavah. In the Parsha of Ata Tetzavah. Now, what's significant of Tetzavah is it's called Teruma Tetzavah Kisisa V'Yakel Pekude. Now, what the Parsha of Shkolim is Parsha at the beginning of Kisisa. So, what happens if Parsha Shkolim falls out to be in Parsha Tetzavah? So, we have Machlekes. I'm going to be Yitzchanafcha. He says, okay, look, Korashita Meva'ata Tetzavah at Kisisa. You know, usually have 7 aliyahs in Shabbos. Do the first 6 aliyahs from the beginning of the Parsha of Tetzavah until Parsha Kisisa, and then the Chad Mechisisa ad Vasisa. Make Shvi the next, continue the reading, which is the next Parsha, which is Parsha Shkolim. Abai says, no, you can't do that, because it's Getin Tav Lama and Aleph. People are going to say, it's not going to be recognizable you're doing it for Parsha Shkolim. They're going to say, oh, the Parsha of Tetzavah didn't end up until here. So they're going to say that's just what you got up to. No one's going to realize that you're doing a special Kriya Satira for the Parsha Shkolim. So Elam Abai disagrees. Says no, what you should do is like this. Kodesh in this halacha. Kodesh Shita Meva'ata Tetzavah ad Vasisa. So do from beginning of Tetzavah up until Vasisa, meaning go for Shvi into the next Parsha of Kisisa, and then V'chad Tana V'kari. And then you have the 7th Aliyah. Go and repeat over Mechisisa ad Vasisa. So make the Kriyas there all the way till Sheni, and then go and say it over again for the 7th Aliyah. So then you realize, hey, didn't we just lane this? Why are we laning it over? Because it's a special Kriyas Torah for that of Parsha Shkol. Now, basically, the Gemara asked under Yitzchak Nafcha that he said that actually you just read it as the 7th Aliyah, let the 6th Aliyah end Parsha Tetzavah, and then let the 7th Aliyah be the beginning of Kisisa, which is the next Parsha, which is anyway Parsha Shkolim, from the following Brisa, which we quoted in the previous stuff, and that's why we brought this in. The Brisa said, Chal Liyos, but Parsha Smuchel. We said, what happens if Parsha Shkolim ends up to be the Parsha near when you actually read it in the Kriyas Torah of the week? Whether it's the week before, whether the week afterwards. Kaida Naisa, V'Kaifa Naisa. So you read it, and you read it again, you double it. So the Gemara says, Bishlam al-Abai Nichuyans, and according to Abai, this is exactly what he said. He said, what you do is, let's say it falls on Parsha Tetzavah, read it all the way for the 6th Aliyah, till Sheni and Parsha Kisisa, and then by the 7th Aliyah, read it over again, so it will be evident that you're doing it with Parsha Shkol. Gosh, according to him, it's difficult. According to him, there's no reading over. He said, do the 6th Aliyah till the end of Tetzavah, and do the 7th Aliyah, continuing from the beginning of the Kisisa till Sheni. So what's this doubling according to Rabbi Shloimy? He would tell you what? What, you think according to Abai, this Brisa makes sense? There was 2 cases the Brisa spoke about, Lefanel and Lachareha. So I understand according to Abai, if it's Lefaneha, if Parsha Shkolim falls out the week before Parsha Kisisa, which is Parsha Tetzavah, so that's what Abai is saying, that, read through Sheni of Kisisa and then do it again. But Lecharech Mishkachas La. When Parsha Shkolim falls out the week after Kisisa, which is Parsha Vayakil, there's no doubling. What are you doubling? Parsha Vayakil, if you go through Vayakil to the end, you're going to do the 6th Aliyahs. Abai would agree you're going to do the 7th Aliyah Kisisa, because no one's going to say that, that's when the Kriyas Torah ended, because you're actually going backwards. So why is it different from Rebbe Sulnaf? It wouldn't make sense according to Abai either. Ela ma yislecha, remember, what do you have to say? Actually, the Brisa means something very different, and there is not difficult on me either. It means koifla b'shabbases. It means you double it on the 2 weeks, on the 2 Shabboses. Meaning you're going to be reading it 2 Shabboses 1 week after another. Meaning, when let's say it falls on Vayakel, you're going to be reading Parshas Kolam after you already read it last week in Parshas Kisisa. Or if let's say it's the week before Tetzaveh, you're going to read it this week and you're reading it next week. So Chanami here also in Tetzaveh, again, it doesn't mean that you're going to double it when you're going to say in the Kriyas Torah. No, you're actually going to do like this Nafla. You're going to do Shishi up until the end of Tetzaveh, and then Shvi is going to be from the beginning of Kisisa. Because when you say Kaifla, it doesn't mean you're doubling it here in this week. It means Kaifla b'Shabbasis. It means you can do this Kriya 2 weeks in a row. But if it's not difficult, that doesn't mean doubling the actual Kriya. You could say it's just doubling in the weeks. Okay, that was if, let's say, it falls out in Parshat Tetzaveh. Says the Gemara, Chalis b'Chisisa Asma. What happens if Parshat Shkolm falls out in Parshat Kisisa itself? Now, that's interesting, because Parshat Kisisa is exactly the Kriyas Torah that we do for Parshat Shkolm. So Rabbi Yitzchak Nafri says, okay, again we have the same machlekes as Abai and Rabbi Nafri says, so Kodashita min Vasisa ad Vayakel. What you should do is start from Sheni, go to Parsha Vayakel, and then Mechad Kodem Mechisisa ad Vasisa. And then the Shvi will go back to the beginning, which is what Parsha Shkolm is, and you'll read that from the beginning of the Parsha. Abai asked, well, people can say, I'm afraid who the cover, what you're reading backwards? That's not how you could do a Kriyas Torah. Elam Abai, Rabbi Abai says, no, Kodesh Shita from Kisisa ad Vayakel. The first 6 aliyahs go from the beginning of the Parsha till the end of the Parsha. And then the Shvi goes back to the beginning of the Parsha and leans from the beginning of Kisisa till Vasisa, which will be specially for that of the Parsha of Shkolem. But you're going to be, again, repeating it over the way Abai said regarding the first machlekes. The Gemara says, Tanika B'Sei Dabai, we have a Brisa says like Abai. Chalis b'Chisisa Atzma, if let's say it falls out to be Parsha Shkolem in the Parsha of Kisisa itself, you read it from the first 6 aliyahs, and then you'll say it over again as the Shvi. We said in the Mishnah, Chalis b'Teicha Shabbos. We said, what happens if Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out to be in the middle of a week, or a weekday? So Mekdim l'Shabbos Sha'avar, so then you're going to read Parsha Shkolem, which the first of the Parshas, the Shabbos before Rosh Chodesh Adar. Now, Itma, we learned the following case is a machlekes. What happens if Rosh Chodesh Adar Shechali is be'erev Shabbos? If Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out to be on a Friday, we have a machlekes. Rav Amma, he says actually in this case is Magdimin. You're going to read Parshas Kisisa in the previous Shabbos, like we learned in the Mishnah, because it's one of the weekdays. Ushmulam, he says Ma'achron. Actually says, no, if it falls on a Friday, you're going to read Parshas Shkolem the next day. You're going to push it off. So the Gemara explains the machlekes. Rav Amma Magdimin, he says you do it the Shabbos before, because the Imkain, if you would push it off, like Shmuel says, to the next day to Shabbos, then Batri Lihu Yomi Shulchanis. You're going to be missing from the 2 weeks that we said before. We said, why do we lay Parsha Shkolem on the first of Adar? We said it could even be going like Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg, who says that you need to have 2 weeks before an event is when you start talking and discussing it. When do the Shulchanis, the money changers, go out in the countryside? Is in the 15th of Adar. So that's why we go and we read it Rosh Chodesh Adar, so that we should be darshaning about it 2 weeks before, like Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg. If you're going to push off the Kriyas of Parsha Shkolem till the next day, till Macharas HaChodesh, the day after Rosh Chodesh, then you're not going to have 2 weeks before. So you can't push it over the day after. It's going to be then by the 16th. And we have to have it by the 15th. You have to have 2 weeks before. So therefore, we're going to do it the Shabbos before. But Shmuel, he would say, no. I agree to you that we have to be like Shmuel, but still ma'achron. Still, instead of doing it the week before, you're going to do it the next day. Because Amalek is going to tell you, at the end of the day, you know when the 15th of Adar is going to fall out? B'mali Shabbos mikli. It's going to come out on Erev Shabbos. Now, as Rashi says, that day, the money changers are not going out because of Kavod Shabbos. Everyone's preparing for Shabbos. So, anyways, the money changers are not going to go out until Sunday. So even if Rosh Chodesh on Friday and you don't do the Kriyas Torah until Beis B'Chodesh, you're still going to get 2 weeks. Because anyways, they're not going out till Sunday anyway. So Hilkach Ma'achron, so therefore we're going to push it off, because as Rashi explained, why are we pushing it off? Why don't we do it early anyway? No, because we don't want to interrupt between the 2 parashas unnecessarily. We don't have to. We don't want to make such a gap between Parsha Shkolem and Parsha Zachor. So therefore, we'll push it off because anyways you'll get the 15 days that you need to get because anyways the money change is not coming out till Sunday. Okay, that's the machlokes. Now Tanan, the Gemara asked on Shmuel from our Mishnah. Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, Chalis, B'Teicha Shabbos, the words in the Mishnah were that we quoted before in our Divrei Maskell, was if Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out to be in the middle of the week, so then you do the Parashas Shalom the Shabbos before. And then Mafsikin, the Shabbos Acheres, and then you have a gap. The next Shabbos you don't lay in any one of the Dal Parashas, and then the following week will be Parashas Zach. It says the Gemara, my love, isn't the Mishnah saying that if it falls out during the weekday, Afil Erev Shabbos, even on a Friday, doesn't differentiate, would be the Shabbos before, not like Shmuel. So the Gemara, no, B'Teicha Shabbos Dafka. We're talking about specifically where actually, you know what we're talking about? That we're talking about during the weekday, not on a Friday. And there, if you're going to push it off, most definitely you're going to be missing from the days of the money changer. But if it was on a Friday, which as Shmuel had explained, where you're not going to miss from it, then actually the halacha is not going to make that. It means specifically during the weekday and not on any other, but not on Friday. Friday would be that you push it up to the next day. The Gemara says, okay, Tashma, it's being arrived from the following Brisa, not like Shmuel. The Brisa says, Ezeyu Shabbos Rishayim. What's the first week of the Dalet Parshas? It's Kol Shachal Rosh Chodesh Adar Lis B'Teicha. Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out during that week. Then you're going to lay in it the previous week. And V'Afila Be'erev Shabbos. Oh, wait a second. My love, isn't the Brisa saying, Afila Be'erev Shabbos is Dumid Teicha, which we just said. Ma Teicha Magdimena, just like when it falls out during the week, you Shmuel agree that you do it the Shabbos before. Af Erev Shabbos Magdimen. So to Erev Shabbos, you're going to do it the week before. Not like Shmuel, who said you'll do it the next day on Shabbos. So Amar Shmuel has an interesting interpretation. He says, this that the Brisa says, that what's the first week of the Dal Parshas of Parashas Shalom is Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out to be B'Teicha. You know what B'Teicha means? It doesn't mean the way we translate it. It doesn't mean that if it came out during that week. Rather, Shmuel says it means Ba. B'Teicha means in Shabbos itself. You know what's the first? Now read it again. You'll see it's a different reading. If Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out on that Shabbos, that's the first week. And actually, that's what he means to say of Afila Erev Shabbos. That what? That even if it falls out on Erev Shabbos, that next day will also be that just like we said on Shabbos, that falls out as the first week, and even the day before, that next day will also be. Because that's like Shmuel's interpretation that you do it the next day and not the week before. So B'Teicha doesn't mean during the week. B'Teicha means in it. In what? What's it? That's a machlokes. Does it mean the week or does it mean on Shabbos? Shmuel's saying it's on the Shabbos, and even if it's the day before, you'll still do it the next day on Shabbos. And so too actually, in the Yeshiva of Shmuel, in their collection of brises, they actually had that the reading of the brisa was that what's the first Shabbos? It's when Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out. His words actually here are ba, not b'toicha, but ba. Ba is in the singular, meaning if it falls out on the Shabbos itself. And that's what the Brisa was saying, that even if it falls out every Shabbos of yesterday, it's as if it fell out the next day. So obviously you see like Shmuel that actually ma'achar, you actually push it off and you don't do it the week before. Says the Gemara, this machlokes Rabbi Shmuel is Tanoi. We find this to be a machlokes Tanoi. Where do we find this? Because the Tanna Kama says of the Brisa, Misargin l'Shabbasis. What's Sirugin? Sirugin means to say that like you skip. So there's going to be gaps between the weeks of the Dal Parshas, between the first week and the second week, if Rosh Chodesh falls out to be during the weekday. If it falls out to be during the weekday, you're going to go and do Parshas Shalom the Shabbos before, and because if you don't, like we said, you're going to be missing out the days of the Shulchanos, and then you're going to have a gap, an off week of the second Shabbos, and then only the third Shabbos will you Parshas Zacha, because we want to have Parshas Zacha right before that of Purim. That's the Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. He says, no, Ein Mesargin. He says, you don't have any skippings, as the Brisa itself is going to explain. You don't skip, you go straight. Now, Amr Shimon Lazi says, Ein Masani, when do I say Ein Mesargin, that you don't skip any weeks, you go straight. There's 4 weeks in Adar, there's 4 parishes, there's only Bizman Shachaliyas Be'erev Shabbos. That's when Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out to be on Friday. That there, when you're going to be pushing it off to the next day, like Shmuel had said before, you're not going to be missing the days of the Shulchanos, because ultimately at the end of the day, the money changers don't go out till Sunday. So then you're going to push it off, and now there's no gaps, because that's going to be the first week is the second day of the month, and then if you go another 7 days, the 9th of the month, and then the third, you can see you get every week. You'll hit every week will be one of the parshas, one of the Dal parshas. Oh, but if let's say Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out to be during one of the work days, where if you would push it off to that following Shabbos, let's say to the 4th of the month or the 5th of the month, then you're going to be missing from the days of the money changes, which they go out on the 15th of Adar. Oh, then most definitely, of course I agree with it, the Makdim Mekoidim Shabbos Sha'avar, that you would go and you would read Parshas Shkolem from the previous Shabbos, and then yes, it would be Sirug over there, you would skip a week. After Bishur Shvat, although it's still Shvat, so what are you doing reading Parshas Shkolem? Because we said we need to have that it's going to be, you can't miss from the days of the money changes, so yeah, you'll read Parshas Shkolem in still Shvat, which is when Rosh Chodesh Adar is going to fall out during that weekday. But one thing we see from this brisa is the same machlekes Rav and Shmuel. The Tanakama, that Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi was saying that you always go and you say the Shabbos before, which is even if it falls out on Friday. That's like Rav. And that we had Shimon Lazar, who was like Shmuel, who said that when did I say you're not going to skip is if, let's say, it falls out on the Friday. If it falls out on a Friday, then you will do it the next day, which will be the Beis, and then you'll have Parshas Zachar on the 8th of the month, and then you'll have Purim, and then you'll have Parshas Para, and then you'll have Parshas Chodesh. You're not going to be skipping any Shabbos. Again, that's only if you hold like Shmuel, who holds it when it falls on a Friday, you're going to do it the next day. But according to Rav, and according to Yehuda Nasi, you're going to be doing the week before, and you're always going to be skipping if it falls out during the weekday, and therefore we see that the Machlekes Tanoim is the Machlekes Rav and Shmuel. Now the Gemara continues quoting from our Mishnah. We said, B'shniya Zachar, the second Shabbos of Adar, or the second Kriya of the Shabbos of Adar is going to be Parshas Zachar, which we remember Masha Asal Chamalek, what Amalek did to do it right before Purim, to remember the Mechias Amalek with the Mechias Hamek, B'chula, etc. Now, we have a similar Machlekes in a different case, as we said between Rav and Shmuel. Itmar we learned Purim Shagalis Be'erev Shabbos, which we had the other year. If Purim falls out to be on a Friday, so Rav Amai says Magdim and Parshas Zachar, which is the way we paskin, you do Parshas Zachar the Shabbos before. Shmuel Amai says no, Ma'achrin. Purim is on Friday. The next day you're going to be laning Parshas Zachar. So the Gemara explains the Machlekes. Rav Amai Magdim, they said you do Shabbos before. You don't want to have the doing of Purim before the recalling of Purim, which is, it says in the pasuk, Nizkarim Benasim, should be remembered and it should be done. Now the doing is the Maisa Purim. The remembering is the Parshas Zachar. So we can't have Purim and then have the Parshas Zachar. You have to have the Zachar before the Asiyah. So you do it the week before. Shmuel HaMamachir says no, you'll do it the next day. Amalach, he'll tell you, the Avdi B'Chamesa, since there's the walled cities like Yerushalayim, that they celebrate Purim on the 15th of Adar, which is Shabbos. Aschiyah v'Schir b'Hadei Adodikasim. You're not doing it before. They'll be going to be happening on the same day of Shabbos, and therefore you could do Parshas Zachar on the next day on Shabbos. Now, however, the Gemara asks Tanan, the Gemara asks on Shmuel from our Mishnah. We just quoted, we said that B'Shniya on the second Shabbos is Zachar, is Parshas Zachar. Now, as Rashi explains, the Gemara is assuming right now that this is going on the Reisha of the Mishnah. The Reisha of the Mishnah was saying that if Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out to be on Shabbos, so the first week obviously is going to be Rosh Chodesh Adar is on Shabbos, you'll make Parshas Shkolem. And then the second week, the second Shabbos will be Parshas Zachar. But says the Gemara, the following cheshbon: Loki mikla b'risharcha b'Shabbos. If Rosh Chodesh falls out to be on Shabbos, mikla Purim be'erev Shabbos. Make the cheshbon. Purim is on the 14th of Adar. Purim is going to be falling out on a Friday 2 weeks later. Uktoni, what does the Mishnah tell us? B'Shni on the second Shabbos, which is the 8th of Adar, is Zachar. That's not like Shmuel, who said that no, you'll do Parshas Zachar the third Shabbos, the following day after Purim. So my puppy says, no, my Shni, what does the Mishnah mean when it says the second week is Parshas Zachar? It means Shni lahafsaka. It means the second week of the gap. In other words, it's not going on the Reisha. There was two cases in our Mishnah. We spoke about when Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out on Shabbos. Then we said if it doesn't fall out on Shabbos, then you'll makdim on the Shabbos Sha'avar, you'll do it the week before. It's going on the Seifa, on the second case, which said if it falls out during the week, that you'll do Parshas Zachar the previous Shabbos before Rosh Chodesh Adar. Then we said umafsikin l'Shabbos Haba, you're going to have an off week the following Shabbos. And that's what the Mishnah is saying, that the second week after the gap, you'll read Parshas Zachar and then the following week is going to be Purim. But if it falls on a Friday, which was like how the Reish of the Mishnah was talking about, if Rosh Chodesh Adar is on Shabbos, then we could say like Shmuel that maybe you learn Parashat Zachar the day after and not the week before. So the Mishnah says Tashma to be a raya, not like Shmuel from the following brisa. Brisa says Eza Shabbos Shnia. In other words, the Shabbos of the second Parsha, Parashat Zachar, when is that? So says the brisa, Kol Shachal Purim Lias B'Toicha. If Purim falls out to be during that week, meaning the following after that Shabbos, Chafilan, even if Purim is taking effect be'erev Shabbos, even on Erev Shabbos, now the wording seems to be, as the Gemara says, my love, isn't it saying that Erev Shabbos to meet the Teicha? That if Purim falls out on Erev Shabbos, is similar to when it falls out during any other day of the week. That you were saying, Ma Teicha Magdim, just like when it falls out during the week, you do Parashat Zachar the Shabbos before, Af Erev Shabbos Magdim, it sounds like even if Purim falls on Erev Shabbos, you're going to do Parashat Zachar the week before, which is not like Shmuel. Shmuel said if Purim is on a Friday, you're going to do Parashat Zachar the next day. So Shmuel says no, and this is a very similar answer as he gave in the previous Gemara's discussion, that actually, no, you're reading the brisa wrong. When it says Kol Shachal Purim Lias B'Toicha, again, it doesn't mean during the week. The way we were reading it was during the week. So then you'll do it the previous Shabbos. No, Shmuel says it means ba. If Purim falls out to be on Shabbos itself, then you're going to read Parashat Zachar on that day. And that's what the brisa is saying, that even if, let's say, it falls out the day before on Erev Shabbos Purim, it's as if it took effect, as if it's happening on Shabbos, which is the next day. And actually, that's exactly like Shmuel. And V'chein Tag Be'er Shmuel, so too in the Bryce of the Yeshiva of Shmuel, they taught ba in it, which means to say that if it's taking effect, if it's happening on Shabbos or even on Friday, you can link Parashat Zachar that same day. And again, even if Purim was yesterday, you're going to land it today. So again, he's saying B'Toicha means on Shabbos, not during the weekday. Now another case says the Gemara, what happens if Chali is, let's say if Purim happens b'Shabbos Atzma. Purim falls out on Shabbos. Up until now we're discussing if Purim is on Friday, then Purim is on Shabbos. Someone Avuna says, Lo Divya Kol Ein Magdim. So then, according to everyone, you're not going to do it the previous Shabbos. Meaning we're not going to read Parashat Zachar the week before, because now you're not going to have the Asiyah before the Zechira, because it's happening at the same time. And also, the Mukafin is not only the same time, they're actually doing the Zechir before the Asiyah, because they're actually having Purim on Sunday. So according to everyone, he says, everyone would agree in this case, although we had a machlekes regarding if it's on Friday, when it falls on Shabbos, everyone's going to agree that you don't do it the week before. But Nachman disagrees, says, no, Adaini machlekes, it's still a machlekes. Even in this case, Rab would say that you do it the week before, so that it's not a problem only that you shouldn't do a Asiyah before Zechira, is that you have to do Zechir before Asiyah. So happening on the same day, that to lay Zachar on Purim is not sufficient. You have to have the Zechir before the Asiyah, and if you're going to actually do Parashat Zachar the week before, and have Purim on the next Shabbos.
Well, we don't lay on Shabbos.
Well, we don't have Purim on Shabbos.
You don't lay on Shabbos, the Megillah.
Right.
So we're not going to lay on anyways.
Right. Question is, what's the Asiyah? If, let's say, what do you do in those cases? What do you, if you had such a thing that you had Purim on Shabbos and you don't lay, so what do you do? Right, so I'm saying, but there are certain things, let's say, that you have on the Shabbos itself, the Purim Sud, this, whatever. So I'm saying, so that's the Asiyah. So you would still have to have the Maktim Zechir L'Asiyah to have Parashat Zachar the week before you have it on the Shabbos. So it's a machlekes, if this would be a case of a machlekes between Rab and Shmuel. And then we learned that it is a machlekes that Purim Shechalis b'Shabbos, that Purim falls out to be on Shabbos. Even over here, Rab disagrees. Maktim Mekuri b'Shabbos Shabbos Zachar. You go and you read Parashat Zachar on the Shabbos before, the way Rav Nachman had said that. Even here he disagrees. Okay, the Mishnah said b'Shlish, the third week. The third tavach is par aduma. You read about the red heifer, which is the whole process of making the ash water, and you spray it on someone that was tummy from a mess on day 3 and day 7. I'll tell you, we're learning the brisa. So what's the third week that you read the third parsha? It's Kol Shesmucha L'Purim Achareha. It's the Shabbos that's as right after Purim. Itmar, but we learned, the Reb Chaim Chanina, he says actually, Shabbos Esmucha L'Rosh Chodesh Nisan. It's the Shabbos that's closer to Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So which one is it? It says, it's not a machlekes, it depends. When did we say it's the one that's closest to Rosh Chodesh Nisan? Is the Ikla Rosh Chodesh Nisan b'Shabbos. If Rosh Chodesh Nisan falls out to be on Shabbos, so that means to say that you didn't have to make the fourth of Parshat Chodesh, the previous Shabbos, So then you're going to read the previous week before Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the Parsha Paraduma, which is what the Chama Bar Chanina was saying, and you're not going to do it the week after Purim, because you want to have the Azhara of Tameim, which is to be purifying them with the Paraduma waters, as close as possible to Pesach. When did we say that it's going to be the week after Purim? Is the Ikla, is where Rosh Chodesh Nisan falls out to be Be'emtza Shabbos in the middle of the week. If Rosh Chodesh Nisan falls out during the week, you're going to have to read Parashat Chodesh the Shabbos before, because you can't do it after Rosh Chodesh Nisan. On Rosh Chodesh Nisan, yes, because actually Chodesh is Lechem Rosh Chodesh. But if it's during the week, you're going to have to read Parashat Chodesh the Shabbos before, and then you have to read Parashat Parah the Shabbos before that Shabbos, which is actually going to be the Shabbos right after Purim. So it really seems that everyone agrees that we want it to be the Shabbos as close as possible to Rosh Chodesh Nisan, but there are going to be times that it's going to be the Shabbos after Purim, and there times it's going to be Shabbos before Rosh Chodesh Nisan, depending on if Rosh Chodesh Nisan is on a Shabbos. If it's on the Shabbos, then Parashat Parah is the week before. But if it falls out during the weekday, then inevitably it's going to be the Shabbos after Purim. Now the Mishnah said, B'Aviv, and the fourth of the Dal Parshas, that this month is given to you, which is the month of Nisan, which is the beginning of the months of the Jewish year. And we read that because it's talking about Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and of course talks about that, which in our last week's parsha, in Parashat Bay, which talks about that of the Karban Pesach, which is what's happening now in the month of Nisan. So we learned the Brisa, and this Rashi points out that this Brisa we already brought before, all the different parts of this Brisa, and we said, like, according to Rav, it's referring to Sirugin, that you're skipping, and according to Shmuel, like we said, it's Ba means not, B'toicha means Ba on Shabbos, so it's a very different reading how you read the Brisa according to Rav and Shmuel. But the Brisa says like this, Rosh Chodesh Adar Shechalis B'Shabbos. If Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out to be on Shabbos, Kairin Kisisa. So on that Shabbos you learn Parashat Kisisa, like we said, we paskin, like the Madama, it says Parashat Shkolim is that which talks about Parashat Kisisa. Maftirin, and the Haftarah is B'Yayada, which I was already mentioned because it says over there, Kesev Nafshis Erikoi. It talks about there in that Haftarah regarding a person redeeming his soul with money, which is, that's what the Karbanis are for, and that's what the Shkolim are, so that's the Haftarah. Now, Ve'ezi Shabbos Rishon, so what's the first Shabbos? Kol Shechal Rosh Chodesh Adar Lis B'Teicha. If Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out to be during that week, so again, that was what Rav had interpreted. According to Shmuel, B'Teicha meant on that Shabbos itself, and fulfilled by Erev Shabbos, which we said according to Rav, that means to say that even if it falls on a Friday, you'll do the Kriya the previous week. According to Shmuel, we mean no. It means that it falls out on that Shabbos, and even the day before the Erev Shabbos, you can do the next day. That's what we pointed out was the Machlekes. So to B'Shniya Zachar, the second week, you're going to read Parashat Zachar, which is to remember the Mechilas Amalek, which is the descendant of Haman. Maftir and the Haftarah is from Shmuel Aleph, which talks about Pakadati, which was that of Shalom Melchot Agag, which is also a descendant of Amalek, and about wiping them out. What's the second week? It's called Purim Lias B'Teicha. If Purim falls out to be during that week, again, according to Rab, it means during the week. According to Shmuel, it means on Shabbos. If on the Shabbos and on Friday, again, according to Rab, that would mean that you do the Shabbos before. Like B'Teicha, according to Shmuel, B'Teicha meant Shabbos, and therefore it means even on Friday, you can do the next day, which he held Ma'achrin on Shabbos. B'Shlish is the third parasha, is Paraduma, is a red heifer. Maftir and the Haftarah is from Yisei B'Yechezkel V'Zerakti Lechem. I'm going to throw on you the purifying waters, which is going to be in Yomei Mashiach, and that's the idea about purification, which is that like that of the Paraduma. V'Zeh Shabbos Shlish, what's the third week? And it's called Shasmucha L'Purim Echadeha. Whatever is the Shabbos right after Purim, which we already previously said that's only if Rosh Chodesh Nisan falls out during the weekday, but if it falls out on Shabbos, it would actually be the following week, Shabbos before Parashat Chodesh. But Revi'is, and the fourth parasha is a Chodesh Hazeh, talks about this new month of Nisan. Maftir and Haftarah from Sevi Cheskel, Koim Asher Elikim, so says Hashem, God, Berishan in the first month, which is Nisan, Be'echel HaChodesh in the first of the month, exactly what the parasha told about by HaChodesh Zerlechem, Reish Chodesh. And as we continue to Beis, Ve'ezohi Shabbos Revi'is, and what's the fourth week? It's called Shachal Rosh Chodesh Nisan Liz B'Teicha, if Rosh Chodesh Nisan falls out during that week, and the Fulfilled by Erev Shabbos, even if it's Erev Shabbos, Rashi points out, here Shmuel would agree that when we're saying even on Erev Shabbos, it doesn't mean like he said in the other first 2 weeks, that then you'll do it the following day. Here he agrees that it's Erev Shabbos similar to Toicha, which is during the week, and that you're going to do it the Shabbos before, because if you would say you push it up to the next Shabbos, you would be doing the Asiyah, which is Rosh Chodesh Nisan, before the Shmiyah of the Parsha of HaChodesh, and therefore he agrees over here that it would be the previous week. Now, there is a long Rashi over here, and Rashi says that regarding all these machlokes we had on this daf, he says our minig is like Rav, which is the previous Shabbos, except for Purim that falls on Shabbos itself, which, as we mentioned before, someone had asked the question, we said that doesn't really happen at all. We don't have Purim on Shabbos. Why? So interesting why that would be. So Rashi goes through the cheshbon. Why can't Purim be on Shabbos? Because for Purim to be on Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh Adar has to be on a Sunday, because it's 2 weeks later. We know 2 weeks later, on the 14th, would be on Shabbos. Now, Rosh Chodesh Nisan would then be on a Monday. Why? Why would Rosh Chodesh Nisan be on a Monday? Because Adar is always chaser, which means Adar is always 29 days. And if you do 28, that's 4 complete weeks. 29 would push off 1 day. So if Rosh Chodesh Adar is on a Sunday, Rosh Chodesh Nisan is on a Monday. So then, if Chodesh Nisan is on a Monday, that means Pesach, which on the 15th of the month, not the 14th like Purim, the 15th, Pesach would be also on a Monday. The problem is, we know a famous quote called Loi Badu. We know Lo Adu Rosh. We know there's some famous Rosh Hashanah Kempi and Aleph Daled Vav on Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday. So there's also what's called Loi Badu Pesach. Pesach cannot be on a Monday, a Wednesday, and on a Friday. So you couldn't have Purim on Shabbos, because then it would mean that Pesach is going to be on a Monday and Pesach cannot be on a Monday. And rather, Rashi points out that the days that are fit to be Rosh Chodesh Adar are Zavdu. Zavdu is Zayin is Shabbos, Beis is Monday, Dal is Wednesday, and Vav is on a Friday. So you're never going to have Rosh Chodesh Adar on a Tuesday, and you're never going to have Purim on a Monday. There's certain days you're not going to have Purim because Rosh Chodesh Adar can't be on that day. Now, so the Rashi goes through a whole cheshbon to say the simon, a mnemonic, to recall the Messiah of when you stop, right? There's Dal Parshas. You would say, okay, very simple. Dal Parshas, 4 weeks in Adar. Every week you're going to do another Parsha. No, there's a whole Messiah when you're going to stop and skip a week to make the calculation of when you do the Dal Parshas. And the simon is Zatu, Bav, Dad, and Ubiyav. What does that mean? So Rashi goes to the cheshbon. He says Zatu is if Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out to be on Shabbos. That's the Zayin of Zatu. Then what's the hafsaka of not reading one of the Dal Parashas? Is on the 15th of the month. That's the Tesvav, Zatu. Zayin, if it falls out on Shabbos, then Tesvav is when you're not reading a parasha, but not more than that. Why? Because on the day of Rosh Chodesh, which was Shabbos, you're going to be reading Parsha Shkol. The coming week is going to be Parsha Zachar. As we learned the Brisa, what's the second week? If Purim falls out to be during that week, and we said, even if it's on Erev Shabbos, and our Mishnah also taught, the second week is Parsha Zachar, that's like Rav, who says if Purim falls out to be on Erev Shabbos, you're going to do Parsha Zachar the previous week. Now, in this case, if Shabbos is Rosh Chodesh, which is the first week is Parsha Shkom, Purim is going to fall out to be on the Erev Shabbos. So we do like Rav, and we do Parsha Zachar the week before. So you're going to have the second week being Parsha Zachar, but the third Shabbos of Adar, which is the 15th of the month, then you're going to make a hefsek. And the fourth week, which is the 22nd of the month, that's going to be the one right after Purim of the Mukafin. Then you're going to read Parshas Parah Duma, as we learned in the Brisa. What's the Shabbos of Parshas Parah? Is we said Kol Shasmuch Purim Achareh, whatever after Purim, but we explained in the Gemara already that's only if Rosh Chodesh Nisan falls out to be during a weekday. In this case, where it's Rosh Chodesh Nisan is going to fall out on a Sunday, which is a weekday, so Parshat Chodesh is going to be the Shabbos after that of Parshas Parah, which is the one nearest to Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So that's what Zatu means to say. If it falls out on Shabbos, which is Zayin, you're going to have a hefsek on Tezvav. What does it mean, Bav, or Boy? If let's say Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out to be on a Monday, which is Beis, then the hefsek is going to be the Shabbos after Rosh Chodesh, which is the 6th of Adar, which is the Vav. Why? Because Parsha Shkolm is going to be the previous Shabbos, like we learned in the Mishnah, that if Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out to be during the weekday, you're going to do the Shabbos of Shkolm the week before. And then you're going to make a gap the week after, and then you're not going to have any more gaps after that. Because the week after that is called Parsha Zachor, and that's going to be the 13th of the month, because you already made a gap on the 6th of the month. And Purim is the following day, which is on the 14th of Adar. The Shabbos after that is Parsha Paraduma, which is the one right after that. And the Shabbos after that is the 27th of the month, which you can read Parsha Chodesh, because that's the one right before Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So that's what boy means. What does dad mean? Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out to be on a Wednesday. So then the hefsek is going to be on Dalid. That's a Dalid. See, Dalid, don't get, it's confusing. Dalid. Dalid is the day of the week, and the Dalid, the next part of the simon, is the day of the month. So then the gap's going to be on the 4th of the Chodesh of Adar, which is the Shabbos after Rosh Chodesh. Because again, you're doing Parsha Shkolm the Shabbos before Rosh Chodesh, and again, like the whole reason, like we explained by what boy means, and then you're not going to have any more gaps anymore. That's what dad means. And the last one of Ubiyoi is the Rosh Chodesh falls out to be on the verse Vav is on a Friday, on Yom Shishi. Then you're going to have actually one gap the following day, which is what the Beis is, which is the second day of the month. And then the second gap will be, here you're going to have two gaps, on the 16th of the month. The first one is going to be the following day, because like we learned in the Brisa, that if let's say Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out to be during the week, you can do it the Shabbos before. So then the second Shabbos you're going to make a gap, because we hold like Rav, who says that Arab Shabbos is like the middle of the week, and then you're going to do it the previous week, and you're going to have a gap the following Shabbos, because Parsha Zachor is going to be the week after that, which is the 9th of the month, which that's the one closest to Purim. Then the week after Purim is going to be the 16th of the month. Then you're going to make a second gap, because although it's the Parsha, it's the Shabbos after Purim, you're not going to read Paradumu. Like Rav Chama Bar Chanina said, that when Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out, when Rosh Chodesh Nisan falls out to be on Shabbos, like it's going to be in this year, what we're talking about, the case that we're discussing right now, then the third Parsha is going to be the one that's nearest to Rosh Chodesh Nisan, so that you could read Parsha Chodesh on the Shabbos of Rosh Chodesh, and Parsha Par is going to be Shabbos before that, which is going to be on the 23rd of the month, not on the 16th of the month. So therefore, Rashi says, in very short, Rashi says, Derech Kitzara, is that the way you establish the days of Rosh Chodesh are Zavdu, are those of the week, and related to each one of those letters, the way you remember the Hafsakis is Zatu, Boy, Dad, Ubiyoi, which means to say if Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out to be on Shabbos, which is Yom Zayin, the Hefsek is going to be on Tes Vav L'Chodesh and not more. If Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out to be on day 2, which is Monday, the Hefsek is going to be on the Vav L'Chodesh and not more. If Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out to be on a Wednesday, Yom Daled, the Hefsek is going to be on Yom Daled of the month and not more. Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out to be on a Friday, Yom Shishi, that's the Vav, the Hefsek is going to be on Beis L'Chodesh, on the second day of the month, and on Yud Bev L'Chodesh, which is that right after Purim, on the 15th, and on the 16th, and there's going to be the two gaps that you have of the Kriya of the Dal Parsha. But now we continue with the Mishnah, second line of the Gemara. We said B'chamesh is in the 5th week. Like I said, okay, then you go back to the normal reading of the Kriya Satar. So the Gemara says, "Let's say the Mai." We already once alluded to this machlekes on the previous stuff. When you say go back to the Seder, which Seder are you talking about? So we have machlekes. Rabbi Yama, he says, let's say the Parshas Yuchezet. What you're doing is you go back to the order of the Kriya Satar we have for the Parshas HaShavua, which in this week's, you actually didn't read the Kriya Satar of that Parshas HaShavua. You only read from the Daled Parshas as the Kriya Satar of that week. Bir Yama, he disagrees. He says, no, let's say the Haftarah Yuchezet. You go back to the reading of the regular Haftarah, because up until now the Haftarahs were, as we had mentioned in the previous Brisa, related to the Daled Parshas. But the Kriya Satar was always the same, what you have during the Parshas HaShavua. So Abaye says, it's logical like Rabbi that you stopped actually for even the Parshias. The Parsha Shavua was not read during those weeks. Why? Because they're not in the Mishnah that said L'chom Afsikin. We said you stop the Kriya Satar for all types of events. Rosh Chodashim, if it's Rosh Chodesh, L'Chanukah, L'Purim, L'Tainis, Mamodes, if it's a public fast, if it's for the Mamodes, which related to the Karbonas. Yom Kippurim. So says Abaya, Bishlam, and the say the Parashas Yuchezet. We understand according to Rabbi that says that during these weeks you stop reading the regular Kriya Satar and you go back now after the 5th, by the 5th week to the regular Parsha. Hainu de'ika Parsha b'chayil, because yes, we have a Parsha from the Torah, Kriya Satar, during the weekdays of the tiniest, the public fast, the Mamodes. because those obviously are not on Shabbos. We don't have Mamadas on Shabbos. And we're saying that you're mafsik. What are you being mafsik? During the weekdays, no Haftarahs. Obviously being mafsik for the Kriyas HaTorah. Oh, so that's what we're saying, like Rabami, that yeah, you actually stopped on the Dal Parashas, the Kriyas HaTorah. But Al-Mandam said according to one who wants to say that no, during the Dal Parashas you kept on your regular Kriyas HaTorah, you're just saying go back to regular Haftarah. But then Haftarah b'chol li'ikah, how would you understand the other cases of tiniest mamadis that you're mafsik? What are you mafsik? You tell me you're not mafsik Kriyas HaTorah, but there's no Haftarahs during a weekday. So obviously it means you're mafsik even for the Kriyas HaTorah. But the other Mandam Rabbi Yomi would tell you, no, hakadisa. You're right. During the weekday, you for sure stop the Kriyas HaTorah of that week's parsha. But on Shabbos, which has Haftarah, when you're going to stop the regular reading for something else like the Dal Parashas, you'll only stop the Haftarahs. And you read the Haftarah from the Inyan of the Dal Parashas. But the Kriyas HaTorah, you won't stop. On a weekday, you have no choice. You're right, you're going to stop the Kriyas HaTorah. But on Shabbos, you're not going to stop the Kriyas HaTorah. You're only going to stop the Kriyas of the Haftarahs. So then the Gemara says, Ubetinius lamali afsaka. So the Gemara parenthetically, once it introduced our Mishnah and said that in the tiniest we stop the Kriyas HaTorah, the Gemara says, why do you need to have to stop the Kriyas HaTorah of the Parsha Shavua? Which Rashi explains, the Gemara's question is asking specifically on Rabbi Yirmiyah, that he says when it's possible, we don't stop the Parsha Shavua, and that's why he said that we're only going to stop the Haftarah, not the Parsha Shavua. So then on the public fast, since you have Kriyas HaTorah on the tiniest by Mincha, so why would you stop the Parsha Shabbat which you read by Shachris? What do you mean? Likri mitzafa binyan diyama. In the morning by Shachris read the Parsha Shabbat. Or by Mincha b'tanesa. And by Mincha you read regarding that Avatinus. What do you have to stop the Parsha Shabbat? So the Gemara say that supports Rav Huna that he says mitzafa kindofya. That actually in the morning when people gather together and they check and they warn the people from the sins that they have and that their fast should be accepted, and actually, therefore, they don't have an opportunity in Shachris to have Kriyas HaTorah. So therefore, the only Kriyas HaTorah they're actually going to be having is only in by Mincha time, and that Kriyas HaTorah is going to be that of the times, not the Parsha Shavua. So, as the Gemara says, Hey Chavdina, what do they do? So Mabai says, Mitzaf l'pagad yom, from the morning up until halfway through the day, Ma'ininan b'milah demasa. They check into the actions of the people of the town to see if there's any sins that they have. And from noon till the evening, then you split up into quarters. A quarter of the day, the Ger says Karinan Maftiri. We read from the Torah and we have the Haftarah, which we said is going to be from that of the tiniest, not for the Parsha Shavua. And the final quarter of the day is when they daven and they beseech mercy. Shemak says the pasuk in Nehemiah says V'yikru b'seber Torah Hashem alikehem revius hayom, that they did the kriya in the book of the Torah Hashem, meaning that the Kriyas HaTorah was a quarter of the day. And the final quarter of the day, they confess and they bow down. That's the rachmi, that's the davening that they do the final quarter of the day. It says, why did you say the opposite? Why did you say that the pasuk that was talking about the 2 quarters of the day, maybe that's actually the 2 quarters of the morning? How do you know they only do Kriyas HaTorah in the evening? Says the Gemara, you cannot entertain to say this because the Chassidus says the pasuk in Ezra, to me they gathered all those who tremble in the words of the God of the Jewish people, for the misappropriation of those who are in the diaspora. And I was sitting and desolate up until the evening time. It says after that, and by the evening time, I got up from my fast. Which the end of the pasuk then says, and I spread out my palms to Hashem. So obviously we see it's only by the evening that he's davening, and therefore we see that the 2 quarters of the Kriyas HaTorah and the davening is by the evening and not in the morning. I'll look at the next Mishnah, continuing with the Kriyas HaTorah of the Mayadim, of the Yom Tovim. The Pesach, on Pesach, the Parshas Moyados, we read from the Parsha of where it talks about, there are certain times in the Torah it talks about Yom Tovim. On Pesach, we read of the Yom Tovim, the Parsha Shal Toras Kohanim, where it says in Sefer Vayikra, which is well known as shiur Chesed V'ez Ki Yivoled, that's talking about the first day of Pesach. The Brisa says the rest of the days of Pesach, there we're malakit and we read from the Inyanim of Pesach. And whatever it didn't mention in the Mishnah, it mentions in the Brisa. Batzeres and Shavuos, what are we laying? Is Shiva Shavuos, where it says, with the Parsha of Kol HaBachor and Sefer Devarim, where it says about the 7 weeks leading up to Shavuos. Rosh Hashanah we lay in B'chodesh Hashvi, B'echel HaChodesh, in the 7th month, in the 1st of the month, which that's also Shorei Chesed in Vayikra, which we are talking about there of Rosh Hashanah. B'yom Kippur we lay in from Achrei Mos, because that's obviously where it talks about what should be done when you're coming in, Kan God Lefnai V'Lefnim. B'yom Tov Rishon Chag, in the first day of Sukkot, Kerem b'Parshas Moedah Shabbatos Kem. Here also we learn from the Parsha of B'yom Tovim in Sefer V'Yikra. B'Shal Kol Yom Chag, although it didn't mention the rest of the days of Pesach, because Pesach is different than Sukkot. On the rest of the days of Sukkot, we read B'Karbanas HaChag, which is in Parshas Pinchas, where it talks about the Masavin of every single day, which here also Rashi goes in detail, where he says that the first day and the second day, you read the mafter, meaning the Kriyas HaTorah is going to be the Karbanas HaChag in Parshas Pinchas. The mafter is going to be B'Chamisha Asar, where it talks about the 15th of Tishrei, which is Sukkot. Now, although the second day is already the second day, you don't read it by Yom Sheni, because we don't want to show that it's suffix of a second day, because it's disgraceful if it's Yom Tov to call it maybe as a weekday. And the first day of Chol HaMoed, which that's a suffix if it's the second day or the third day, then the Rishon, the Kohen gets by Yom Sheni, second Aliyah gets by Yom Shlishi, and the third Aliyah gets by Yom HaRavi. And the fourth Aliyah, which is added on because of Chol HaMoed, he reads actually what's called the Sveiki Hayom. What's the Sveiki Hayom? He reads by Yom Sheni, Yom Shlishi, whatever is the suffix which day it is, he reads both of them. So to the following day, the first Aliyah gets by Yom Shlishi, second Aliyah gets by Yom Ravi, and the third one gets by Yom Chamishi. And the fourth Aliyah gets, again, by Yom Shlishi, Yom Ravi, which that's the ones which we're not sure which day it is in Galus. So to constantly, the fourth Aliyah reads what the first and the second Aliyah got, except for the last day of Chol HaShemayim, which you cannot read by Yom Shmini because that's not one of the days of Sukkot, it's its own Yom Tov, Shmini Atzeres. So therefore, on the seventh day of Chol HaShemayim, the first Aliyah goes a little bit further back, although it's the seventh day. The first Aliyah reads B'yom HaChamishi, second Aliyah reads B'yom HaShishi, third Aliyah reads B'yom HaShvi, and the fourth Aliyah reads B'yom HaShishi, B'yom HaShvi, which those are the Sveiki Hayom. Then continues the Mishnah, B'Chanukah, we read from Sefer Bamidbar Ben Asiyim, which is also like a Chanukah HaMizbeach, when they inaugurated the Mizbeach. That's similar to that of Chanukah, when the Chanukah is the Chanukah that they reinaugurated with the Chashmonaim. The Purim we learn from Shmais V'Yavei Amalek, which obviously is the whole story of Amalek coming. Rosh Chodeshim, we learn from Bamidbar, it says B'Rosh Chodshechem or Rosh Chodesh. B'Mamados, which is the Monday to Thursday, that would have these stations that would be for the representative of the Jews on the Karbanos, would be B'Maisa B'Reishis. And that we learned about in Masechtas Times in the last parak, which talks about the Kriya, that on the first day we read Bereshis and Vayirki, which is the second day, and every single day you read basically that day's Kriya of the creation and the following day to get enough aliyahs. And the Gemara there explains why we read from Maisa Bereshis by Mamadas, because it's in the merit of the Karbanas that heaven and earth are lasting, therefore that's Maisa Bereshis, which relates to the Mamadas, relates to the Karbanas.
What date is the Mamadas?
What?
What date?
What date?
Mamadas.
Every day of the week.
At the time of the Beis Hamikdash, you're talking?
Yeah, when they had Karbanas. Then they have these Mamadas, these stations. Betanya is on the public fast, as we continue top of Lamed Aleph and Aleph, then they would learn Berachas Uklolas of Parshat B'chukaisai, to let people know that it's because of the sins, which is what a kindness is for, that punishments, klolas come to the world, and therefore they should repent, and they'll be safe from the tsar that they're fasting about. Moreover, once we mentioned that of klolas, says the Mishnah, Imav Sikim Uklolas. We don't stop in the middle of the curses of the Techecha, as the Mishnah itself explains, meaning you don't have two people get the aliyah. You have one person that leans the whole thing, and therefore the first two aliyahs, they read for the Pasha of the Brachas, and the third one reads the whole klolas himself. Shem v'chamishi, on the Monday and Thursday, what do we lane? It's the same as b'Shabbos b'Mincha, which is Kodesh Kisidron. You read like the order of the Seder of the Parshas, which the Gemara is going to bring a machlekes Tanoim and the Brisa. Where do you start on Monday and Thursday? But definitely from Shabbos by Mincha, you start the next Parsha, and so too Monday and Thursday. But it's not part of the calculation when you reach the next Shabbos. Meaning, when you reach the next Shabbos, you're going to read over what you started by Shabbos by Mincha Monday and Thursday. You're not going to say, oh, we got up to Sheni, we'll just continue by Sheni. Shenema, and the Mishnah includes like we learned in the pasuk of Yikra, which this is going the whole Mishnah. From this pasuk we learned that it's a mitzvah on a Yom Tiv to read from the Yana D'Yoma of the Yom Tiv. It says, "V'daven Moshe es Meyad Hashem al Bnei Yisrael." Moshe spoke about the Yom Tiv Hashem to the Jewish people, which mitzvahs in the mitzvah sheyikron kol echad ve'echad b'zman, that you should read every one of these Yom Tovim in their appropriate times, which is what our Mishnah was talking about, what those in Yom are, and what are those kriyas that you read in those days. Thank you, anytime.